welcome to this live recording of group discussions. This recording, I hope, will give you an idea of what it will feel like to belong to a real group and have a discussion. This has become really important to get trained to be participating in a group discussion, because as Indians, we are not able to engage ourselves in meaningful discussion. We argue. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Haven't you read our very own Amartya Sen's The Argumentative Indian? Haven't you read what the media has been saying about his book? How can you say that on camera?
I think there is a difference between being argumentative and being and arguing. I think we are arguing Indians. I don't think we are argumentative. I don't think we are able to carry on a discussion. We get angry, and what's this about the media? Anything that Amartya Sen says gets into the media. Anything he writes about is spoken about in the media. The media, I think, needs to have some control over itself.
I'm not surprised, because the moment we say the word media, you go gaga about it. I mean, you don't like anything that the media does.
I don't think the media is doing the right thing. Look at what they've done with Sania Mirza. Look at how they've made her into an object of so much, display, and there we are discussing her in the front page, third page, everywhere. And what? I mean, she's
because at 18 she's achieved so much. At 18 she's achieved so much. What did you do at 18?
This is exactly what we do. You're a woman, so anything that Sania Mirza does,
no,
you're going to speak about her. What did you do at 18?
That's not true.
Cut. This is what we do.
Absolutely.
We think we're discussing, but we lose out all the opportunity that we had to discuss. We could have discussed Amartya Sen. We could have discussed the media, the role of the media. We could have discussed Sania Mirza as an achiever. We could have discussed the entire arena of discussion. We began with that, how as a race we are not able to discuss, but we missed out on all those issues. And you know what we did? We started accusing one another. You are like this and I'm like this. You can't do anything better than this. Doesn't this sound familiar? Isn't this how we always discuss things? We think we're discussing, but we're not. And we always move away from the issue and get on to the person. We start attacking people. And that's how we think a discussion goes on. With this group discussion that we are planning to hold, and which you will watch now, several of them that we are recording, I hope you get an idea of how an ideal group discussion should take place.
Absolutely. Let's look at a fresh way of seeing how good discussion, a good, rich and meaty discussion can happen.
And also when we like to convince others, we raise our voices.
Yeah. We just did.
We raise our voices when we know that the other person has an opinion that doesn't match with ours.
That's not discussing, that's bullying.
So we'll try and take a look at group discussions and hope you get to learn a lot from here. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you know, friends, we are here to discuss a topic: courts are necessary for dispensing of justice. So as far as my idea goes, I think courts are required only to consider each and every case on a single standard. Like if you have different courts, different people having different standards of evaluating a case or something, and you can't reach a proper conclusion. Suppose a case comes, you receive a different standard of law, and you see from different standard of law, there won't be any equality among those cases. To view them on the single set of laws, we require court. As far as
before going into that, we'll just look into what courts are basically. Courts are basically legal bodies or legal institutions where which give out justice and which provide equal views to either sides of a person who is being accused of doing some crime. So you look at both sides of the coin, wherein he can defend himself by means of a lawyer, and there is a challenger to the defendant, and that's how the court decides and comes out with the final verdict.
It's like we require a central body wherein people they abide by certain rules, and the rules have to be universally followed by everyone.
exactly.
It's like that. It's same for everyone. So there's no way of being fair or not. And a court is a legal body, like he said. I agree with him. The definition of a court body here. Now going with that, like how you were saying for different people, there are different courts. Now the topic. If we go to the topic, it's like courts, is it necessary for dispensation of justice? Now there are two ways of looking at it. Are we going into a court for a personal matter, or are we going in for a legal issue? I think if it's personal matters like, a family matter or something like that, I think courts are not very necessary for those, because it's just like wasting time of a court. Things which can be discussed amongst your family members, why put it in public?
We can say first of all, a society consists of people who are ready to abide by a certain frame set of rules, and if someone breaks the rules, then courts are required whether to first of all to judge whether he has broken the rules or not, and then what kind of punishments will be dispensed.
Exactly.
The point which I am making is that, as you said, personal matters, there are different types of courts for personal matters and corporate matters. So I would say,
Just like to add on what he has said, what a court gives us, like I told you before, it gives the both sides of the picture. A person who argues his or defends his case in a court, he can. There are people, the judge, he can literally look at both sides of the coin and come to the conclusion as to whether what he's arguing or what he's charged of is right or wrong, and that's how the final justice is.
As far as the settlement of dispute goes, I think you don't require a court. If there is a compromise, you should understanding between two parties, then I think there is no need of a court. If you take a case or something to a court, it becomes public. Then there is no there is a compromise also. Then there is a clash of ego. When you go to media has so much, and there is no party willing to compromise on that.
The court should be it should be only one central authority. Otherwise the case you have ulemas ruling over the court, and so one central authority should be there.
So how you said compromise between the two. The court, I think, comes into picture when that compromise factor doesn't take place.
Yeah.
See, it's not that courts are not necessary. It's like this.
I would like to courts are very much necessary because they tend to give a neutral point of view.
Exactly. Compromise is only can be done for the smaller crimes. For bigger crimes, you cannot just do compromise. You have to look for some authority which can give you justice.
But looking at this point, then there is a number of pending cases going on. Case or if the court was so effective, then there wouldn't have been so many pending cases. By going by the record.
But then you also have to look at one point that what if the courts weren't there?
Whatever Panchayati Raj, in that case, then those years there was no courts. That means that those people never get justice or what?
But
If
if you look at what happens if a court is not there, when a person is charged for some crime, then there is no body which decides as to what should be the intensity of the punishment that has to be imposed. And for a person who has committed murder, he can there is a life ban, there is a 8-year imprisonment, or there is a death sentence. You never know how can you give any of these punishments based on any of the facts. The police or the other legal authorities, they don't have the right or they don't have that just to decide what is the punishment that has to be given to them.
Also what happens is when the courts aren't there, then there is always a tendency for biasness to take
Exactly.
place.
The courts have the personal framework which is independent of the person dispensing the justice. Even he has to abide by the rules which are given by the others. And the second point is that, first of all, the person who gives justice is not enforcing that justice. There are independent authorities. So the authorities who are enforcing the justice cannot, really go and meddle.
But there are many cases where they manipulate the witness, and we know okay, this is not fair, but we can't say anything because they manipulated the witness and the court just sees the witness. There
But there are so many different types of court that come into existence. You have your you have a sessions court, then you have a high court, and even if you don't get justice at high court, there is something called the Supreme Court.
But you can't assure yourself to get the different bodies in the
system. Because in Panchayati Raj, if you are given a justice at a particular level, then you can't go to a higher level. So it's hierarchical.
And see the amount is spent while going to court. If you settle the thing outside court, then you don't need to spend so much, and there is no so much bitterness among the two parties. But if you settle outside the court, it's okay.
Everything has to be settled outside the court. There will be no clash, and the entire world will be a much more better place to live.
That's what smart people do, settle outside the court, and things are not done. Things are based on evidence. And if there is no evidence, the thing called as evidence, then how will you prove your point? See, because just by saying
I
something.
think court should come into play where you require legal record. For example, like in Muslim community, like when you say talaq for 3 times, it means like God taken divorce. Like in this thing, there is no legal record. Now someone can come up tomorrow, okay, I didn't divorce this person. In that case, you require court where you can have legal record. Okay, this person has happened. Or in the case of fatwa, where different communities are offering different standards. To ensure one set of standards is used for everyone, because that time required.
I think that is what a society, they are abiding by a certain set of rules. As the Muslim authority has prescribed certain rules, if all Muslims are abiding by the rules,
then they need not come to courts. They are coming to the courts because they are not abiding by the rules. They don't want those rules to be enforced. The point is that if we can separate people who make rules, people who give judgments based on the rules, and people who enforce the rules, if these three authorities are separated, then we will get justice because no one is interfering with others. So there is no favoritism, or maybe there is some kind of arbitrariness in the process.
This separation can lead to many confusions. Like currently we are having parliament and court. They are just disputing over whether whose authority should be regarding the engineering case. The court is saying that there shouldn't be reservation, and the parliament is saying that there should be reservation. So if we separate these two authorities, then it can lead to many disputes. In that case, we should have more power and authority to dispense case. Now, if you keep on challenging court's order, then there will be no record. In the sense, like if you challenge court's order in district court, you can go to high court. If you go there, you can go to Supreme Court. This kind of case, like case can prolong. It will never come to a.
But there is no specific boundary that has been drawn. You go to the district court, then you go to the high court, then you go to the Supreme Court, and there everything ends.
Your main aim is to solve, not to prolong the case or something. If you can arrive at a settlement outside the court, it's
that point is.
Over the case of see, it's like this. When you go into the court, you obviously want the case to be solved. But if it doesn't go in your favor and you're not guilty, then obviously you go to the Supreme Court or whatever. There also, if your case is not accepted.
First of all, you need a substance in your case to be accepted in the court, the higher authority. If you don't have any substance in your case at all, the court will not accept it. That's the first point.
If you don't have substance and you don't have a good lawyer, then you will never win the court. People can always find a way around any law, So I don't think court is that effective in giving justice.
But that doesn't justify
the court, it can be misused also. A perfect example will be of that case in which a person happened to kick a Coca-Cola can and it fell on his leg, and he asked for compensation from Coke, saying that the thing which you have installed machine, that's faulty, and he got somewhere around some millions of dollars of compensation. So that is somewhere where you manipulate the law for your use, and you use the court to your benefit. That is something which should not happen. That is how people misuse courts to give justice for them.
That's not a negative point of the court. You can misuse anything. Everything has its positive and negative.
It actually depends on how you interpret the rules, first of all. Because judges are not creating the rules; they are not acting on the rules.
Laws should be continuously changing. They should adapt according to the situation, and and they shouldn't be changed like for our one's benefit. There should be consensus among the people. Like what should be the law? Consensus. If you go on a scale and ask 100 people whether you like to settle your case out in the court outside, I'm sure 90% of people say I don't want to go to court because they don't believe in court at all.
That is because of the negative point that the cases are prolonged. It takes time. There are cases running for 8 to 10 years. There hasn't been a hearing till now.
Yeah.
But if there is a hearing and if there are evidences, obviously there has to be,
there's so many politicians and so many cases going on. Not even a single person will be convicted. There's still a final election. There's still becoming the MPs. If court was so effective,
again, what you're saying has some substance. But what I want to say is, before we think what is wrong with the system, we can also think in a direction. What if courts are not there? Then what will happen?
Exactly.
If you are saying that out of all options, we have to choose the best option. We are not telling the ideal option.
It should be there to solve a case on a equal standard, but not to settle a dispute. This should get better solved outside the court.
It's arguable like this. For a child, there are no parents, right? There is no one to guide them, no one to tell them anything, or they are not scared of someone. They do anything they want. It's like that same case. Giving an example, if there are no courts, the crime rate obviously because they are not scared of anything. If settling outside the court, for example, there is no court. That means you only discuss among yourselves and settle. If someone kills someone.
No, but if you want to be effective, give them higher authority.
Stop. Summarize.
Yeah, so to summarize, what I would like to say that courts are obviously necessary because there always has to be a neutral viewpoint on any case, because biasness always creeps in when there is not a single authority to judge over a case, any case for that matter, and thus courts are always necessary.
I think
Stop that. We had to summarize. Thank you very much.
The topic, courts are necessary for the dispensation of justice, merited rigorous discussion, and I should say that all the participants performed very well. Now, there was only one assumption that the Indian context was taken into account, which could have been avoided, because we are dealing with the aspect in general. In terms of Vishal's contribution or entry, I would like to say that your body language needs improvement. While introducing yourself, there shouldn't be any shaking, okay, or fiddling with the pen. That takes away the focus from your entry. So you need to work on that. Then in terms of content, the word bias was repeated many times. So you need to develop originality. And when you are asked to summarize, it should be a synopsis of whatever has occurred and not your own view. Okay, not just your own view. So you should have included whatever the others spoke. So that is a good chance to offset the, relatively few contributions that you make to the discussions. So kindly work on it. Now, Ninad, yes, you brought about two important points. Now, you said that the central body, okay, is very important, and however, the ulemas, the presence of the ulemas brings about a different perspective. Now, instead, because it's something that deals with the courts, it would have done you good to bring about the aspect of uniform civil code. So when you crystallize your idea like this, it gives you more brownie points. Okay. Also, you said you cited the case of the engineering issue, no? So for bigger crimes, courts are required. If possible, in that entry, kindly give a possible solution. So that makes it a wholesome entry. Instead of just highlighting a problem and leaving it hanging, you kindly give the possible solution. Aditya's contribution, yes, very good, but only two things you need to avoid. One, fiddling with the pen in hand, and do not give the impression that you are reading from a particular page. However, you had a reservoir of entries, okay, and all of them were relevant. And you also gave the impression that you were very involved in the entire exercise, okay, so that gives you bonus points. Okay, and originality, yes, you score very highly because you brought about the aspect of substance, okay, and the separation of dispensation of justice, right, with the executive, and good pitch. So you scored well on that.
Thanks, Jaya. To start with, again, participation from the three of you was very good. Really very good, and I think you all were a little more participated than the former three. Okay, Gagan, to come to you, I think a maximum number of entries in terms of quantity were yours. Okay, you started off the discussion, you said we are here for discussing the topic. Now this was a relatively peaceful discussion. But if it were not to be, if the number of participants were more, you have to ensure that you don't lose any airtime saying something which is really not relevant. To say that we are here for discussing the topic is anyways understood. The good thing about your participation was that you were very versatile. The points that you brought up, the money factor, the Muslim law, not to prolong the case, the time factor, the delay factor, all of them were very, very versatile participations. The only feeling that I got towards the end was that you were getting a little negative about the whole thing. Probably your personal bias with regards to the topic was showing somewhere because you kept asking questions. So what happens when there is a delay? What is the use? You have to understand that when you're raising a question in a GD, nobody is really coming forward to answer it. So as Jaya said earlier, the entry is more wholesome if you were to actually give the answer to the same instead of just raising the question. Again, pitch, very good. Gestures were there, not there. I would say work a little on your gestures. Okay. Shrikant. Okay. Again, good. Okay. You have an advantage because you sound very composed. You sound very formal, which is something that will work very well for you in a GD. In terms of number of entries, you were probably a little behind, vis-a-vis Gagan. You said about courts being legal institutions. You did not really start off the GD, but you gave the definition of what a court is, which is a good way to start off a topic like this. Okay. But towards the latter part of the discussion, I felt that your participation was a little monotonous. You kept saying the same thing, that they are there to ensure that there is objectivity, justice is given. So I felt the same point was coming in different words. So you need to kind of look at some different perspectives. When you realize the point has been said, even if you feel that someone else needs to be told this point again, skip that feeling. Okay, say something, think of an example, like the Coca-Cola example you gave, very good. Examples are always welcome because they give the evaluator a feeling that, okay, here is a person who has been reading up and who is able to relate the topic to the things that he has been reading up. So that example was a very good entry, but you could have spoken a little more. You also need to work on your pen thing, because the pen was there, pen was not there. Okay, I thought the pen kept coming. Okay, Gaurav. Okay, good. You have a good voice. It really sounds good individually. You spoke about how the court is a central body and they come in the picture when they're actually a compromise is not possible. Okay. But towards the latter part of the discussion, you kind of started just refuting Gagan's points, because he kept getting a little negative about the whole topic. You kept saying, no, but then what would we do if there is no court? Probably what you can say is, if there was no court, we would need to. It's a better way of saying the whole thing. The pen thing was very prominent with you too. The good thing about you, although the pen was in your hand, your gestures were very good. See, gestures should add to what you are saying. It was happening with you, except that this was a little distracting. But otherwise good. Maybe you could have spoken a little more. In fact, that goes for the two of you, because the discussion was peaceful. You could have come up with, I felt that you could have come up with 2 or 3 more, different points.
To sum up, when you have a subject like this, and when we say courts are necessary, it is open to debate or discussion, right? So now, you could have brought about the aspect of capital punishment, human rights, riots, things which cannot be discussed, in the confines of a house, or a compromise cannot be easily reached. And since we have a knowledge age, a technological age, which has, transgressed beyond the limits of a village, right? So it becomes necessary to have a body which is, you could say, impartial and effective. So you could bring these points into focus, right? So environmental issues, you could have given the example of Erin Brockovich, or it cannot be settled in a house, or you cannot even arrive at an easy compromise, because there are so many heavyweights involved there, and there are so many vested interests. So you need a body like that to function effectively. And if society has to be kept going as a functional, effective unit with so many disparate interests, it is necessary. So you have to hinge on the main issues which the word necessary raises, which the word dispensation raises, that. And then open it for discussion.
Talking in the Indian context, okay, given that we have different castes, different beliefs, different traditions, maybe this body is even more important here than another country to bring that element of uniformity. That was another thing that could have been discussed.
Okay.
Of our discussion is, will China be the next emerging superpower? And I would invite all of you to share your views with the
To begin with, sorry to interrupt you, but to begin with, to maximize the productivity of this discussion, let's zero in on the definition of the word superpower, the way we attach or rather define the word superpower, and we can probably enlist a set criteria, and see if China fits the bill.
I think there can be different criteria for calling a particular nation a superpower. One obvious one would be economic. If a country has, the highest per capita income or the highest GDP. Or another can be cultural, like for example, America being a cultural superpower where Windows and McDonald's are everywhere. That would be one way. In a way, India is a cultural superpower as well, a historical superpower.
But when you talk about superpower, it generally boils down to the economy, the industries that you find in.
Exactly, it's about the leading position in world trade.
Exactly.
I think if you were to lay ground for exactly what are for China and against China, points
for this discussion. The 3 points for China would be, firstly, it would be that China has been like, called as a shop floor of the world in terms of its manufacturing. It's like the rate at which it is manufacturing, the growth of manufacturing has been galloping. Secondly, I think China has had a very stable government because of its communism. It has also opened shores to capitalism now.
Yes, but the authoritarian policy won't last long, given the standards.
Our discussion has somehow not focused upon the military prowess of the Chinese. Actually speaking, what USSR was economically not a too great success story to talk about, and still they were kind of giving United States a run for their money. So basically, their military prowess, their defense their armaments, their defense, their warplanes, their missiles, their
Actually, going
I
back
think
to
superpower today's world is a very loosely word because
that's right.
Exactly. See,
Going
my
back to
point is a
definition
little
of
more
superpower
ideological.
that he would say, I would say that it's already a discussion that past its time, because China is already a superpower.
Exactly. My thing is that there could be ideological.
Right now you're looking at China as at the peak of its economic, GDP is good and all that. But the thing is now, it's very easy for a developing country to have a very good economic growth and a GDP.
That's right.
But then if you take the example of Japan, USSR, these
Exactly. The
countries
question is
when
how
they
long
were
will
developing,
you
they had
sustain
good
it?
economic growth. Everybody thought that these countries would be superpowers. That is what is happening with China also right now.
Like the first thing
I think superpower-
Germany would be the one who would be emerging as a superpower.
Once China has developed, after that to sustain the development, only then it will be called a superpower. So it's not yet a superpower.
And talking
I would
about
like to raise my
sustainability,
question.
since you raised a very important point about sustainability, I think currently with the prices of oil and natural resources, the way they are growing, and the fact that we don't have renewable sources of energy apart from oil and gas, I think it's also a big question mark on how much of these resources become available to China to continue being a superpower.
Sachin, I think the whole discussion actually centers about only one point over here. China recently had a very, very high rate of growth. That's why all this debate comes about, that whether it is going to be a superpower. But actually, if you look into the history of superpowers in the past, Germany was a superpower at one point.
So was Russia.
So
was
was
Japan.
And the USA remains the one and the only one right now.
Yeah. So that is what I'm saying, that only if China continues to grow after reaching after it is developed.
I agree.
Only then it can be called
at a sustainable rate, but looking at Chinese for the last 10 years, they've been growing at more than 10% for the
But
past 10
it's
years.
not just the growth, it's how they're going to manage the growth that they currently have. Do they have enough entrepreneurs to take up and start investing within the country?
I think
Do
now
you actually have the country opening up to investors from around the world?
I think they have
And the thing is, within the country, do they have enough?
Every decision that China makes affects so many countries in the world.
See, what they are
That is
doing
how
now-
you can say a country is close to being a
What
superpower.
they are doing
in
now
this
is they are
discussion of,
replicating, they're replicating goods and producing them in China. Because China has such a huge...
I think in this discussion of superpowers, let's first focus
Define
on
the
sectors.
criteria.
Like for example, you have the agricultural sector, you have the manufacturing
We need
sector,
to
then you
list
have the
out
tertiary or the service
criteria for a
sector.
superpower.
Now the growth that is in India is being driven by the service sector, which is the call centers, the BPOs, the software industry. And the growth that is happening in China is being powered by the manufacturing sector. At some point in the world, there will come a point when only so many shoes, only so many umbrellas, and only so many beds can be
even
done.
the other
So what
countries,
happens
Western
after that
countries.
to the capacities that China has developed? If you build 200 factories and you have 2 lakh people to work those factories, what happens when the demand drops? I believe the economy of China is overheated at the moment, and only if the sort of manufacturing consumerism that is present in the world today is sustained, can the Chinese economy sustain. I believe if China wants to keep itself as a superpower in the future, it will have to focus more on the tertiary and the service sector.
Exactly.
And in terms of servicing, I think the biggest disadvantage that China has is that it has a very low English-speaking population. So that is probably where they might have some problems later on.
Another thing is that there has been a drop in the population growth of the country as such, because probably of their one-child so-called policy or whatever it is. So what is happening is the number of young people after a point is going to be supporting a larger population of older people, and that's why China will be aging prematurely. So even though the world population is increasing, it is very important that the domestic population population also goes on increasing to sustain the growth that the country is going through right now.
But I think international capital goes beyond nationality and international capital goes beyond nationality.
Please let me answer this question. The question is, you are saying that China has an aging population and has controlled its population with control. Now it did by introducing a one-child policy. It's not very difficult for kind of non-democratic China to introduce norms so that it can just lift off the one-child policy ban and it can.
That's true, but by the time that you bridge the gap, it's going to be a while.
Right now, I think we have to look at in this discussion is the remittances that come from overseas Chinese. Because the number of Chinese that actually emigrate is huge, and it's not just historically like India and the colonial relationship with Britain, where Indians go to the colonial masters, the Commonwealth. Chinese emigrate anywhere, to Suriname, to Zimbabwe, and a huge amount of the Chinese economy at the moment is from remittances that the overseas Chinese make to mainland China. So I think that that is one point which is going to help China in sustaining its economy.
But my point is international capital goes beyond patriotism and nationality.
When you talk about, I think one factor
I think we are
I
actually
differ on
deviating from the center topic
is very
because, excuse me, I think all of the discussion that we are centering upon is how come China has a high growth rate, how it is manufacturing, it has strong points in manufacturing. Whether it has a good capacity to become a superpower, having a lot of overseas expatriates and somebody sending remittances back at your home is no definition of being a superpower. If you are a superpower, you are a superpower in a military terms, in economic terms, in social terms. If actually China is not a very transparent society. There is no reliable source even to know whatever even if they are saying that we are having 8 or 10% of annual growth, there is no reliability on that.
I think that's interesting though when we talk about the military strength as a yardstick of whether a country is a superpower. I think increasingly that is becoming obsolete and not really, because in a world which is globalized, in a world where everyone does business with everyone, the incentive, even on an ideological basis, to attack another country militarily, and in the context of the world being a nuclear place now, and the dangers that can come with the nuclear attack of one country on another, I think the question of military might is passe. It's okay as
we can have a study wherein we can look at the factors why US is a superpower. Then we can actually decide as to why China and how China can become a superpower or whether they cannot become a superpower. I think one of the biggest factors for US
colonialism policy that the US has pursued,
I think we should also go back to the definition of superpower, because what are we talking about? The way we are discussing superpower is in a very sort of patriarchal, sort of brute force sort of way. I believe a country is a superpower if the people who live in that country are happy. If the people in China are miserable and the official figures
won't be a superpower.
Probably, yeah. If the official figures and statistics show this much amount of money coming, this much amount of money going, but if the people in that country are not satisfied and if they are not happy and if they do not have the basic freedoms and human rights that people in other countries enjoy, then I don't think we can call that country a superpower.
By this definition of superpower, China would be at very low because China has a very low girls to boys ratio, which is close to 86 as compared to 92 in India itself. Even the rift between the rich and the poor is growing. Each passing day is growing. So by the definition of happiness is to superpower, probably China would be the lowest in the world.
I think China also has a lesson to learn from these Asian neighbors which underwent South Asian crisis and they were facing having a very high rate of growth, and there was such a booming economy and everything was very rosy. And even in Argentina, they had it set up on a very high growth path and then it went down the crisis. So actually just a very high rate of growth, and actually all this debate about that it is going to become next superpower. To become a superpower, it takes a lot more than a very high rate of growth or exports or manufacturing. It's I think much more about how you treat your people, how you invest in your own people, whatever earnings you have, what is it that you are giving back to your own people?
I think
will that result in a happier China or a happier world is what we are looking at.
I think
China will lead to a happier world.
I think China needs to focus on
if China is happy by claiming Taiwan, will the Taiwan people be happy?
I think it's important that
this will lead to dispute with the US as well.
I think it's important that we focus on what goes in the future into making a superpower. I think if China can spend huge amount of money on research, on technological research and on building the kind of industries that, like for example,
Which
say
they are
mobile
doing.
phone
They are
technology, information
sending people in the
technology,
space.
software technology, call centers, that are the sunrise industries now, which are going to create sort of growth in the future. Then they have a chance. Another thing is China is, because of the language barrier, because it doesn't have a colonial past and they don't speak English, they have a big barrier in communicating with the world. I think if they can
Now
they will
beyond communicating in different languages, we have a lot of resources. I don't think that would actually stop China from
Communication is important because today world is driven by services. Less of manufacturing, more of services. So when you're looking at services, it's communication, it's exchange of ideas.
It cannot grow beyond a certain limit.
I disagree.
In order to grow at a sustainable rate, as Priyanka was saying, you need to have and boost your manufacturing.
I disagree, because if you look at Israel, Israel has a huge service industry.
You cannot compare Israel with China because
You cannot make every country go into the service sector and just sustain on the service sector.
Secondly,
We
the
need
amount
the
of
other
profits
sectors.
that get made in the service sector from providing a certain amount of service is huge compared to the amount of money that
Right
gets
now,
made
China
in the
has managed to
manufacturing
reach where
sector.
they are in
Also-
spite of not being part of the service sector. So I do not think that them getting into the service sector will actually be a major player in their growth, in their becoming a
No,
superpower.
I think it will.
the Chinese will become a superpower only and only because of their capacity to manufacture at a very fast pace. That is the only reason that China will become a
As of
superpower.
now, what they're doing is they're just replicating the goods from US and
Yeah.
They have a manufacturing idea, invention. People, countries which are growing and which have this superpower status, they have to invest back into the technology, have to get something out of their country instead of just getting products and replicating them and passing them on.
I think one
So China
thing
has to
China-
start moving towards that also, inventions and exploring and research.
But China has a
Chinese
very
are
influential economical diaspora here in Asia. It has influenced Asia in the past with Taiwan and Japan, and the yuan and yen put together accumulate almost 50% of the world reserves of foreign
The
currency.
one thing that is ailing China's economy is lack of good executives and good managers. They don't have a systematized management education program. They opened up this sector for education around 10 years.
See, these are ideological differences that might arise because of the Western culture that has influenced the world over a period of time. It is not that the Chinese culture is wrong. The Chinese culture has built over a period of time, and it just does not coincide with the Western thought. And that is probably the reason that you and I can discuss such an issue, saying that the Chinese manufacturer.
I think one thing that works for China is, the way they have implemented the SEZ concept, special economic zones. Something like a city like Shenzhen, which was a fishing town till, 10-15 years back. It has been transformed into a world-class city. You're looking at a situation wherein, okay, there was a proximity of Hong Kong to Shenzhen, but even then they have completely transformed so many small towns. They have developed this SEZs without much effort. That is what they have done in a very good way.
Okay, you start summarizing.
we have the topic of discussion was will China emerge as another superpower? So we have looked into the fact that manufacturing is one of the major reasons why China has become a superpower. But we have also focused on services sector, which some people thought that is requisite for China to become a superpower. But maybe China has to invent and invest in its own country to make it a superpower.
Thank you very much. This is being recorded? Yes, start. The topic given was, will China emerge as the next superpower? Now, because it is in the form of a question, right? It is a tricky topic in the sense there is every temptation, rather there is every chance of yielding to the temptation of taking a side, yes or no. But you should not yield to that or succumb to that. Still, you have to come up with various perspectives on that matter. Now, when I say will China emerge as the next superpower, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, Okay, at this stage, as it is today, who is the superpower? So you take that as a hinging point and you say what exactly a superpower means by virtue of its being there at the top. What does it signify? Hegemony, dominance, in what respect? Economic? It need not be cultural, but eventually it does translate to cultural hegemony also. Because whatever the superpower does, the other ones will do it. Why? Because of the demonstration effect, which Keynes talked about. Right? So it is inevitable. In a society, ultimately there will be strata. Okay, and there is no room at the top. There has to be only one guy over there. Right now it's the US. Okay, now the question is, first of all, this question, because it arose, has to set the alarm bells ringing. Because it means that there is a guy who is knocking at the reigning man's door. Okay, so what has that guy done? So we need to do a reality check in terms of manufacturing, in terms of men, money, materials. What transformation has China brought about in its closed society in the last 20 years for it to merit this status, first of all? Why didn't the other countries match up to this? That's the first question, because all the countries have been around for as many years, but the revaluation of the yuan sort of unsettled the US. Okay, why? Why should it unsettle somebody? And what sort of terms does China dictate that makes one person think? So all these issues should be discussed. Also the governance aspect, because there is an element of autocracy in the government, it becomes easier for them to implement whatever they have in mind. Many countries have good intentions but it cannot be translated because of the limitations of governance. Because if it's a democracy, you have to take everybody into account. So because of its separate autocratic way of functioning, it has been easier for it. Now easier is a loaded term, because then what are the costs that the society pays in terms of emotional overall, emotional upheavals, psychological well-being and all. Okay, so then you can take it off on a totally different plane. So economic will be the easiest to attack because it's a known thing, a known enemy as it were, for vying for the superpower status. But you can also take it to the other issues and give it a wholesome. Right? Coming to the individual feedback, Sunil talked about the USSR, the warplanes and the growth rate for the last 10 years. So you indicated that you believed that China indeed was inching towards superpower status, isn't it? But somehow those statements lack the necessary conviction simply because of your body language. I need that forceful statement to identify that indeed you believe it, Rolis. You had the matter ready with you, okay? And it was right on, bang on target. But you need to convey that through body language too, in a group discussion. Okay? Sudesh, I think you allowed people to, take off from where you stopped very easily. You should not allow that to happen, because GD ultimately boils down to survival of the fittest. No doubt it is a team exercise, but if you do not get your required airtime, the evaluator may not have the time to recall what you said. So if you have 4 superb entries, he will remember maybe 1 or 2. So you have to ensure that, and that is your prerogative. You have to take that proactive effort, because you began very well. You said that you talked about the definition of a superpower, and then you said that authoritarian power will not last long. But then you stopped short and allowed the others to, so give it a proper end point. Okay, so that is one. And the yuan and the yen, factually it may not gel, because we are really not looking at a Japan-China how do you do sort of situation. So if it does not exist, and if even there is no prognosis to indicate that, I don't think we should venture into uncharted territory. Okay? It's dangerous unless you can back it up with stats. Right? And Kit, you spoke very well on the 3 points about the shop floor and the fact that it should not be a loosely used term. That had tremendous potential. The term superpower will no longer be used as a loose term. Simply because the earlier superpower, for example, if Akbar was the reigning monarch, he could do so, he could remain so for 50, 80 years, nobody would disturb him. Because life had that pace. Today you could be unseated much faster, simply because the pace is so fast. Okay, and the low English speaking population, somebody could have taken that and tried to tell him that, or rather the team, that it is possible for them to even build on those deficiencies, and they're doing that in fact. Because China has one unique advantage, they think as a whole. See, whether it is right or what are the inner problems, okay, the problems within the state is one issue. But they are able to think as one national entity, and that works to their advantage. Okay, so that is also one point in their favor. And less of manufacturing, more of services, it can be explored by 2 or 3 more people and add body and bounce, as they say. As a shampoo would add body and bounce, a development of an idea also will add body and bounce. There can be a root idea, but then it needs to be developed by 2 or 3 people. And then again somebody could come up with a contrarian view or a not thought about view which can make a mark. Fine. Now Asan.
Thanks, Jaya. First of all, I must say that each one of you spoke very well. Right? The time simply flew. That's one way to look at it when you sit on the other side. So if there is no discussion, obviously I might get bored as a moderator. But I did not, so I must congratulate each one of you. Coming to the point of how to you all performed. Since Jaya was speaking about each one of you, I'll mention a quick note on Priyanka. Priyanka, you spoke well. You had a few points which are very good. You did bring up the point of economy much before anybody else could bring you. At the same time, you were able to also make an eye contact with each one of the candidates. And sitting on this seat, it is pretty difficult task. It's not so easy because you might get glued on to one person at a given time. However, a point of concern was that in the middle of the discussion, a question was raised and it was raised directly to you. You went about answering the question. What is critical in a group discussion is that it is a group discussion. So you need to always speak to the group. You cannot get one-on-one. Right? The question might be raised because you must have spoken something, but you should appreciate that you need to address each one. Right? A person sitting on the far corners, it's a easier task because you can scan the entire group in one go. But since you are in the middle, and in case any one of you happens to be in the middle, you need to ensure that you are looking at both sides and also make sense both sides. Right? So that is quick feedback on that. Anshu, too many questions, right? As a proper feedback, in a discussion, I think it would be suicidal if you ask too many questions. Because the moment you ask a question, the answer somebody else will do. So the moment somebody else answers, you have lost it. Because all you have raised is a question. You did not contribute anything. So there were questions which kept on coming up saying that why a superpower or why not a superpower, but all of them were being taken up by others. And in one such case, you did ask a very point-blank question onto one of your team. That should not happen, right? Because in a discussion, you are not trying to pinpoint somebody saying that you did this or you did that. You need to come up from an angle wherein you should say that this point has a concern and this is my take on this point, rather than saying that why did you think or what do you think about it, because it would be improper for you to hand over the baton to someone else, right? So you had many an opportunity to speak on this topic, but every time it came up as a question. So it is also difficult for me to evaluate the content which you possess. And it would be, the dilemma would always be with the moderator, because I would never be in a clear position to evaluate you. So this can be taken as an example wherein you should try not to question too many questions in the GD. Sachin, I think you had a free time. Yeah? So you were allowed to speak and speak and speak. So you spoke your mind, and it's very good because you got a very good voice. Devina, then you were very assertive in your body language, and that did not even cross the boundary of trying to push others. You were able to control the group by your talk. There was one instance where you kept on talking and people were thinking, will he stop or will he stop? So I'm sure. But in terms of, again, content-wise, there were points which you did raise. I would, because those points are very similar to what others are also have spoken about. However, there is one aspect wherein you came very strongly, wherein you said that China, it would be very difficult for China to become a superpower unless and until it works on its tertiary aspect. In this case, I would be cutting down points from your tally. The reason being is that the topic of the discussion was to discuss this, whether China will emerge as a superpower, and you have already given the verdict, right? Though this was done by each one of the team members in this GD, but your point came very, very loud.
There's a finality.
Right, yeah, and that discussion, that statement said as if this is a final statement, and I don't expect any other discussion coming from this case, right? So otherwise, a lot of points you managed to garner. Priyanka, you gave up. Why? You thought that the discussion didn't hold value, or you thought that the others are not listening to me, so I don't give a damn.
No, it wasn't that. The thing is, I wasn't able to, I didn't think of anything to contribute.
Right. So, primary rule in any GD, you don't speak, you're out. I might know, I may possess immense knowledge, but you need to speak. There would be such an occasion wherein you would feel the enthusiasm might drop suddenly because people are not listening to your point. But that doesn't say that I need to stop. You have that window of 20 minutes, you need to keep on hitting it. Every opportunity. Right? So even if you do the mathematics, let's take 20 minutes, 10 minutes would be a waste because people are trying to speak. So even if there are 10 people, you don't get more than a minute. So that 1 minute you need to keep on hitting. Right? You had a point which you could have developed further. I will take your example because you had very promptly brought in the concept of US being a superpower and how if China has to, it has to sustain. Now at that time when people overtook your point and then deleted your point, what you would have done probably was to bring that same point again, but at a slightly different level, wherein you could have added more value to it. So it might be the same point which is continuing, but you could have added value at every stage. Or you could have taken that point and added it from a totally different dimension, wherein you could have said that there can be a particular chart wherein we can actually compare who is doing good on what segment. Because sustenance alone may not define superpower. Right? Now, this is in terms of what you, each one of you spoke. Everybody had a very good voice, so I don't see any problem. Even on the body language, except for Priyanka, I think everybody else. And I raised the points wherein the body language was a point of question, like the other Priyanka. So you need not answer anybody in the GD. You should not. Now coming to the topic, I will not give a lot of points. One fundamental question: what is a superpower? You may have your own set of definition. You could have jotted down those 3 points. So you couldn't say that my report card should say a yes for military, economic, and say social.